Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about decision making. Now, this is a fascinating and really uh, complex subject that is going to be absolutely central for consumer behavior. What we're trying to do is trying to understand the kind of processes that consumers engage in whenever they are actually making decisions about products, brands, etc. Now, the first thing to understand, and this connects to a series of other discussions we have had so far in the class, is that not all decision-making processes are going to be the same. Like consumers have multiple strategies that they are going to undertake whenever they are actually making decisions. There are going to be some decisions that are going to be thought out really carefully and where a lot of effort is going to actually be put forth by the consumer. Those we're going to call for the most part cognitive. There's going to be some decisions that happen almost automatically. We're going to call those habitual. And there is going to be other decisions that are made as a response to some sort of affective reaction. And, those are kind of like a gut shot, um, gut decisions, right? Something that just, comes out almost immediately, but maybe it's not a decision you make on a regular basis. And these three strategies are going to be used constantly by consumers, and they work differently. So today we're going to break them down a little bit and what's behind them. Now, first, let's start with the situation that we encounter ourselves as a consumer in the 21st century. We have a marketplace where the number of options for any decision that we're going to be making as a consumer are absolutely numerous. Actually, hyper choice is a pretty reasonable description of what we encounter every time we go to the supermarket, for example. You walk down the aisle at Publix or Walmart or any other large supermarket, and what you encounter is that in the ketchup aisle you might have 50 to 70 different options of ketchup if you account for the different sizes, flavors, organic versus non-organic, natural with non-sugar added. There are even different colors of ketchup. There are green versions, different brands. The possibilities are endless, and this is just with ketchup. Okay. And it's fascinating because you will think that more choice equals better situation for consumers, and that's what a traditional rational economist like a big train when I was young will suggest, right? The more choices, the better choices you're going to be able to make. But that is not always the case. In fact, oftentimes we have so many choices ahead of us that we don't know what to do, and we do oftentimes nothing. So we choose not to actually choose a product. And that can actually be detrimental both to the consumer and the companies, right? So there is this myriad of choices ahead of us. By the way, I will post in the description a link to a phenomenal video, TED Talk by Professor Swartz about how having so many choices actually makes us unhappy. He goes into a lot more detail into this point that I just made, and it's definitely worth a watch. So what we're going to do oftentimes is constructive processing, which is the idea that we're going to decide ahead of time how much effort we actually want to undertake before we engage into any decision process. And if we see that the effort that is going to be required is too high, we might choose not to choose at all. Okay, and something associated with this is the idea of mental budgeting, which is basically consumers deciding how much effort they want to allocate for the different actions that they need to undertake. And coming from different budgets, you might do things that are maybe a little bit funny from a cognitive perspective, right? So what people are going to do is they're going to make decisions about what decisions to make based on how important that decision is for them, what their individual circumstances are at the time, and variables like involvement, which we have talked about in the past. And these are going to play a role in what kind of decision-making process you're going to engage in, or if you're going to engage in a decision-making process at all. Okay. Now, in a situation like that, what we're going to do is we're going to decide which one of these three broad strategies are going to be better suited for the problem that we have at hand and the level of effort that we're willing to engage in. Okay, if we think that the level of effort should be high because maybe, like we said in the past, because the risks associated with the choice are high, or because it's a product category or a brand that is particularly relevant to us. And what we're going to do is we're going to do basically high effort decision making process, which we're going to associate with cognitive. And so it's going to be something that's going to take us a long time. We're going to think about it carefully. We're going to weigh both pros and cons, etc., etc. Okay, that's going to be our cognitive decision process, which is associated with high effort. On the other hand, if maybe we are in the opposite situation, maybe something that is not that important for us, or something that we buy regularly, and because of that, we already know what our choice is going to be almost ahead of time, then what we're going to do is we're going to use behavioral decision processes, right? So these are going to be things like we have already discussed, like inertia, where you just go to the store, and when you go by the ketchup aisle, even though there are so many choices, because you always buy Heinz and because you always buy the 8-ounce bottle, that's the one that you grab. You don't look at prices, you don't look at new products at the shelf, you just grab it and move on, right? Good. And then the last bucket, or the last different type of processes that we're going to use depending on the situation, is going to be affective decision making. This is when we basically are guided mostly by our emotions, right? So I've discussed this in the past, but whenever you meet somebody for the first time, you make a pretty quick decision about whether you like them or not, right? And it's that gut feel that makes you basically choose to like somebody or not, to say yes to somebody who's proposing you to go on a date even you don't know them or not. That quick affective reaction is the one that I'm referring to right here, right? And all consumers are going to be able to use all these three different and distinct strategies, and what they're going to do is, depending on what kind of effort they want to put and what kind of situation they are facing, they're going to default to one or the other of these three. So as consumers, we're going to be making dozens, if not hundreds of decisions every day, right? And at the end of the day, you want to feel good about your decisions, right? So how do you make decisions that are right for you as a consumer? Well, one of the concepts that it's important for this is this idea of self-regulation, right? So we've discussed, if you look at it from a personality perspective, and if you take a Freudian approach, this idea of the id, right? We have these short-term pleasures, right, that we are guided or tempted by, right? Maybe guided is not the right word. Tempted by, right? And we know that if we give in to those pleasures, there's going to be consequences that are maybe not in accordance to some of the goals that we have, some of our motivation as consumers, right? And, you know, making the right choices, right? Whether it is dieting, right? And because maybe we need to lose weight, or maybe it is studying versus spending time with your friends, right? You know, that's a difficult choice, because obviously you spend time with your friends, it's a good thing, right? Socially, and maybe in the long term, right? Maybe some of your most important relationships are coming there. On the other hand, you know that you need to study for the test, or you need to get some more homework done, whatever it is, right? So when you have motivations that are in conflict like that, self-regulation is what enables us to basically say no to some of the things that we know we should say no, because they are incongruent with the goals that we're trying to achieve, even though in the short term they might actually be more appealing. Okay. Now, implementation intentions are essentially the what-if scenarios of what are we going to do if, for example, your mom, when you go to visit, presents you with a cake that she just baked, even though you are on a diet, right? So what kind of strategy are you going to use to not hurt her feelings? On the other hand, not eat the cake, because if you eat the cake, you're going to be maybe to some degree ruining your diet, right? So those what-if scenarios and planning is what we call implementations and intentions. Now, some of the strategies that we use to enhance our chances of achieving the goals are, for example, to exaggerate the potential negative aspects that some of the choices have, just so that we'll be less likely to choose them. We call that a counteractive control, right? So the idea is, if I know I'm trying to diet and I'm presented with something that is tempting for me, like ice cream, let's say that I like ice cream, what I'm going to do is, in my mind, I'm going to exaggerate the consequences of having one scoop of ice cream, because if I don't, I'm just going to give in, and then after one scoop maybe comes a second scoop and then a third one, etc., etc. Right? So that exaggeration in my mind of the negative effects of the ice cream is what we call counteractive control, and this is one of the strategies you can use to self-regulate. Okay. Another one is having information that allows you to make better decisions, right? So if you have continuous and real-time feedback loop about the decisions you're making, it tends to make people make better decisions and self-regulate better, right? So talking about the dieting again, right? And if you're trying to diet, one thing that helps in the choices that you're gonna make is if you, for example, can track your calories, right? So you might have a calorie tracker in your app, where what you do is, in your phone, I mean by app, you may have an app that enables you to track calories. So what you can do with that is, every time you eat a meal, you input that meal into the phone, and it will tell you what your calories consumed are, and you will have a goal of what you're trying to reach for the day, so that you can stick to your diet. And that keeping an information loop going, so that you know exactly how many calories you've consumed in the day, might enable you to make better decisions, for example, in the evening, when you see that you've already consumed all the calories that you should have for the day, and that tempting whatever, popcorn, chips, whatever you have at home that you like to eat when you're watching a show at night, maybe it's really a bad idea. So that feedback loop enables you to make better decisions, and maybe it's self-regulated better. Speaking of evening chips and popcorn, one thing that is fascinating to me is this idea of the morning morality effect, which is that, and you can test this yourself, I don't know if you've experienced this already, but I can tell you I do all the time, is that in the morning it's a lot easier to do the right thing than it is in the evening. And the reason why is because by the time that the evening comes, you made so many choices and you are literally cognitively tired. So you are more likely to basically have your self-regulation mechanisms and executive control center so exhausted that what you're going to do is you're going to give in more easily. Okay. So avoid temptations, but avoid temptations especially in the evening. And you can see how historically this affects not only dieting but everything, right? So lying, it's more likely to happen at night than it's in the morning. Any negative behavior like that, it's more likely to happen in the evening, because our executive control center that regulates our self-regulation mechanisms, it's more likely to be depleted. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first bucket, which is the cognitive decision making, and we're going to break it down into the different stages so that we can understand it better. So this is the typical breakdown of the different stages that consumers engage in when making decisions about products, brands, or ideas that are of particular importance to them, and because of that, they're going to take their time solving the problem and coming up with reasonable alternatives. So the way you start is first recognizing that actually you have a problem. Okay, so this could be biologically driven, like we said in the past. If you're hungry, right, your stomach's going to let you know that, there is an urge to eat, right? So this will be the problem, the recognition stage. Or it could be driven externally, doesn't have to be internal. Recognition can start externally. Maybe you see somebody wearing a sweater that you think it's nice, and suddenly you realize that maybe it will be a good idea for you to buy a sweater, because after all, you only have two that fit you at this point, and of the two that fit you, one has a hole on it, right? So in that situation, the problem recognition doesn't come because of some biological trigger, but it could be from some other external trigger as well. Okay. Then after you realize that you have a problem, right, what you're going to do is you're going to engage in information search, right? These are all the strategies that you're going to use, and we're going to talk a little bit more in detail later. But to gather information about the potential solutions for that problem that you have encounter, okay? So that might be taking your phone and looking in Amazon for different options for a sweater, right? Or it might be, driving to JCPenney and taking a look at what they have in stock right there, right? Those are information search strategies, because what you're doing is you're trying to gather information about potential, in this case, products that could help you solve the problem that you have noticed, okay? Then after that, after you've looked for information about the options that there are, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the different alternatives that you could actually purchase. Okay. So if you are at the store, you might see what's on the shelf. Like I said, if you're shopping online, maybe your computer or your tablet, or maybe you go to the store and at the same time that you're at the store, you check on the phone what other options there are, and that way your set of potential alternatives is even bigger. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to compare those, maybe in your mind. Maybe if it's a big decision, you might even make a spreadsheet like I did when I was, for example, trying to get financing for a car, right? But that's maybe because I'm a little bit of a nerd, right? But where you have all the different options, all the different interest rates in the case of a financing, right? All the different terms that they have, how many months I could be financing the same car with the different institutions, what kind of conditions they have. All those will be put into the spreadsheet in this case, or maybe just in your mind thought of. And based on that, you're going to make a choice using whatever rule you use in your mind to aggregate all that information. We'll talk about some of those later. Then you're going to make a choice, right? You're going to say, okay, I'm going to go with Verizon Wireless for my phone carrier, right? And after you make the choice, what you're going to see is you're going to basically ask yourself, how well is it going, right? Did I like the choice I made, right? Is Verizon treated me right? So when I have a problem with my billing, do they fix it right away? Are they giving me options that, are making me happy in how they are operating this particular service, right? Or are you going to have second thoughts, right? Are you going to evaluate your purchase or your choice as something that maybe you're not sure about? Are you having second thoughts about it, right? And then if you are, then you might start the problem recognition again. Maybe you realize that you made the wrong choice and that it's time to maybe look for phone carriers again, right? And then you close the loop. Now we're going to talk about some of these stages in a little bit more detail. So first, the problem recognition stage. It's important for you to realize that problems, when I'm saying problem, this is a negative state for most of us, but I don't mean problem as in only negative. It could also be an opportunity recognition, right? So it's a little bit more broad than what it sounds like. Okay. And this can actually arise in two different ways. And you can see this graphically in the next stage. As you can see here, what we're going to be doing as consumers, as humans really, but consumers too, is we're going to be comparing what our actual state when it comes down to anything is versus our ideal state. If there is a difference between those two, that's when we encounter a problem, okay? It's the difference between what you would like to be and where you are that creates the deficiency. If you are at the same level, let's say, that you would like to be, then there is no problem in your life. So if you understand that a problem can arise because of two situations. One is because what you would like to be, now it's higher than it used to be. So if you say you see your friend and they just bought, I don't know, a new purse, right? And it looks really nice. You used to think that maybe your purse was sufficient, but now that you see a new option that you did not consider before because you've never maybe seen it before, now suddenly your ideal, it's higher than it used to be, right? Now you will desire to have a purse that has the features or the brand or the design or whatever it is, or the one that your friend actually has, right? So now there is an opportunity that arises, right? Your actual state has not changed. You still have a purse and it's maybe perfectly functional, right? It's not like it broke or it's not that you lost it, right? But there is a difference now that has arisen between your actual state and your ideal state, okay? And that's because the ideal state has shifted up, right? The opposite can also happen, right? Your ideal state might stay the same, but now you might have a problem with your purse. Like, for example, maybe the strap of the purse breaks, right? Now, suddenly, the actual level of satisfaction with that purse has gone down, right? And now that creates a problem. Is the delta or the difference between the ideal state and the actual state. And that can change because a new opportunity arises or because a new problem shows up. And so it can happen from one side or the other, but it's the difference between the two that dictates the problem recognition. Now, after we've identified the problem, whether it's an opportunity or an actual problem itself, then what we're going to do is we're going to be gathering information about the options to solve that problem, right? Or to tackle that opportunity. Okay. And to do that, we're going to engage in different strategies to obtain information. Okay. We're going to talk about at least two different types of information. One is internal and another one is external. What is internal information? Internal information is essentially memory and experience. Okay, those are two things that we have already discussed in class, right? But when you are actually at the store and you're trying to buy a product, oftentimes what you will do is you will think, hey, how was it the last time that I purchased Tide? Was I happy with it, right? Did it clean the stains from my clothes properly? Did I like the smell of the clothes after they came out of the dryer, right? You're going to be basically going through the different experiences that you have had with the products, and you're going to pull from your internal memory what are the relevant pieces of information that are going to help you make a decision about the problem that you have. Maybe you need to buy laundry detergent, right? Or you're going to engage in external information search. An external information search could be, for example, once that you get to Target, if that's where you shop, right? Looking at the aisle for the different options of laundry detergent that they have, right? That will be external information search, right? Because you don't know what's going to be at Target, but when you get there, you look at the brands that are there, you look at the prices that they have there, you look at the different sizes that they have there, right? Or after you get to Target and you don't like what's in there, you pull your smartphone and you start looking at Amazon to see what they can ship you by tomorrow, right? Because you need the laundry detergent because you just realized today that you ran out, right? So in a situation like this, the information search can take different forms, okay? And like I said before, it could be online or it could be in real life. You have here some of the different options. Okay, good. Now, how much search are you going to engage in? Well, the answer to that is it depends. It depends on many things, right? One of the things that is not on the slide that is going to be a function also, or is going to determine how much information you search for, is how involved you are with the product category. If your level of involvement is high, what you're going to do is you're going to engage in more information search than if your product involvement is low. This shouldn't be a surprise by now. We've talked about involvement quite a bit. Good. That aside, what else matters? Another thing that matters is whether you're an expert in the product category or not. And what's fascinating about expertise is that it does not affect the amount of search linearly. It does so in a curvilinear fashion. And you can see that in the slide right here, right? As you become more of an expert, you're going to be more in this side of the spectrum, right? These will be people that have high knowledge, and because of that, they are an expert in whatever product category you're talking about. The amount of search that you're going to engage in is going to be low. You can see that here, right? And it's going to be similar to the amount of search that you're going to do if you're a novice, somebody who doesn't know almost anything about the product category. Why? Because novices are only going to be able to interpret and process very general information about the product category. They don't know much, right? So because of that, they're going to start with the big picture information. And that's where they're going to stop for the most part, Okay. On the other hand, if you're an expert, you already have quite a bit of knowledge. So because of that, you're going to do less information search. And also, if you do an information search, it's going to be a lot more goal directed. You're already going to know a lot about the product category. You're going to know a lot about the different options that there are, but maybe you forgot some of the technical specs of one of them. So you're going to go and do a Google search just to know exactly how much RAM that particular version of the iPhone, I don't know what number we're at already, 13 has, right? Okay. And who makes the most information search? Those are going to be the ones that have average knowledge about the product category. Those are the people that are in the middle, okay? Because they have more knowledge about the product category, they're going to be looking for more information to go deeper into it. So they are not going to be only looking at information that is broad, but more concrete information. But on the other hand, because they don't know as much about the product category, they're going to need more information to satiate their curiosity or understand better their options. Okay. So who does the most information search? The ones that are somewhere in the middle when it comes down to product knowledge.